Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for 2015. It's been a long wait, Fitzy. I've been away, travelling the world. I'm surprised I even remember my AFL team. But anyway, we're back. We're here to help you guys with all your Supercoach this week. We're going to do a review of the season so far, the first 5 rounds. I think it's been probably one of the worst starts for a while, for some players, mainly premiums and defence, but we'll get through all that very quickly shortly.
I'll make a comment though. You were in America for 3.5 weeks, and I reckon you spoke to me more when you were there about Supercoach than you do when you're home.
Yeah, but you responded. So.
I know. So I'm like, and I never sleep, so I get a message at 2:30 a.m. about trading someone in. But it's just it's good because it's modern technology, isn't it? So you can do it from wherever. But so it's been an interesting start. I think it's been it's been average. I think, especially losing a few top premiums and a few lines in general underperforming. It's been. It's interesting to see like who some of the top players are that we may not have expected. So
exactly.
But I think firstly we might just run through our own sides just to sort of give people an idea of how we're faring. So Gracie, we've got yours on the big screen.
I'll start mine first, and I do blame being in America for being ranked 12,000th at the moment. But I'm coming back hard. I did lose Ablett, unfortunately, like I'm sure a lot of people did, but I did a sneaky trade, and I've currently got $500,000 in the bank. So
Ablett to Van Berlo.
Couple of big inclusions this week for me, but we'll explain them later in the week. So back line, pretty happy with Shaw, Taylor, and Oxley. They've all been pretty well consistent, bar a couple of games, but Taylor's been probably continued his pre-season form, and Shaw's just the consistent player he is. Not a big scorer like he used to be in his early days at Collingwood, but he gets those 120s, 100s sort of thing. And then Oxley, well, he's just gone bang a couple of times and just risen. Him and Seedsman played a similar role, but they did well. Both did well on the weekend. The week before was a bit. Oxley sort of struggled a bit on Anzac Day, but moving on to the mids, I've got Fife, as everyone should have Fife if you don't already. You've missed the boat on him until he drops, which doesn't look like it's going to happen. Pendle's the ever reliable. I picked up Sloan Fitzy 2 weeks ago, and he's gone 260. So not good, but hopefully he gets back. Started with Selwood. He's had a couple of hundreds, not big ones, but I reckon he'll come good.
He will.
Especially this week against the Pies. He does like playing against Collingwood. So, and then all the rookies pretty much. Cripps, if you didn't get Cripps, or people who traded him out and then got 170.
Imagine that, especially you traded him down to Van Berlo or someone who didn't quite make the cash that people were hoping.
Exactly. So you got Alice Yeoman, Vandenberg, Cripps, Miller, who started off slow, a couple of low scores, but he's really found some form now. Everyone probably started with Heaney, and he's obviously might not see him for a while,
possibly.
So, but all the rookies so far have been quite good. So, Rux Goldstein, he was pretty much a must at the start of the year. I went with Marich. But there's a few guys there that you could have went for your second ruck.
We'll talk about that when we get to the rucks. We'll do a bit of a breakdown, but absolutely.
Forwards, Swanee's been pretty good, especially at his price. You couldn't really knock him back. Dusty's been pretty consistent. My man, the Bont, he was in from the start. He did miss that one game, but I think he's scored 100 every game just about. He might have scored just under once, but then obviously you got Hogan and Salem in there as well. Jack Loney, Fitzy. Did very well. Good. So
we're spoilt for choice.
We are. I think we've done well with our rookies this year. Our premiums have let us down a bit. So
it's a bit sad, but I can remember last year wasn't so bad, but in years gone by when some of the rookies would just not only would they not score, but they'd be in for 2 games and then out forever. I remember old mate Tom Couch, who never got a game. So that was disappointing.
I reckon 99% of teams had Tom Couch too.
I think just about on the bench the whole season. So it is good to see that there's some cash generation happening. Especially like you got Tarrant, who went up 100k in 1 week, and he's probably going to go up the same this week. And Cripps, you've mentioned, Vandenberg, Alice Yeoman, they've all been really good, and they're scoring consistently, and they're also getting picked and not being the sub, which is and a guy like Took Miller, he's obviously in a really good situation now with a few injuries. So his last 3 weeks he's probably averaged 90. and he's going to make plenty of money. So I think, sport for choice this year, but it's good as long as you jumped on the right people. So
definitely. Move on to your team, Fitzy.
My team's not doing badly.
Well, you're ranked higher than me,
ranked just outside the top 2,000. I sort of fluked a good score this week by using a few loopholes, Gracie.
Yeah.
So
backline cheap loopholes. I think.
I know. So I put a few non-scoring players on the bench to get some good scores out. But backline's been a bit hit and miss this year. Like I said, Oxley's been fantastic. He's sure. Most people started with him, and it's not hard to see why. But Simpson, Smith, and Malcheski for me have been a little bit ordinary. Simpson and Smith I can excuse because I think they'll come good.
I think Simpson's mainly just due to Carlton being terrible at the moment, and he's getting some games he's getting a tag and others he's not, and it's very hard because their run off halfback, especially with Yaron out at the moment, it's probably not helping Simpson as well. And
the form of the team as well. Like they started similar last year, they didn't win a game till round 5, and I think they've only won one this year, same sort of position. So I actually kind of feel sorry for him. He's the only player in that team who tries his guts out every week and gets no reward for it. But he'll be a top 10 defender. But Malcheski's the one I sort of picked to try and hopefully get a leg up on everyone. But he's been really bad, and he's obviously probably the worst pick of the year. But I've still got him on the bench. I do think he'll come good. He's out with a knee at the moment because Rodney Eade actually said in a press conference a couple of weeks ago that Malcheski was having some troubles, and it's obvious that he's had a problem with the knee. But with, like you're saying, Sard and Oxley and these guys, and I even managed to get Brown's score by putting Malcheski on the field. They're all scoring well enough, so we can hold there. And I've got my rule for defenders that I'll explain in our next video, I think. So no trades down back, please.
Yep.
Midfield's been okay, Gracie. I've Fife and Pendlebury the same as you. Lewis and Kennedy have both been okay. Lewis is going to miss a couple of weeks, but like we're saying, with enough rookies playing now, he's no worries to put on the bench. And same as you, got Vandenberg, Cripps, Alice Shulman all averaging very healthy 85 plus scores there.
I must say I did miss the boat on Rich. I was umming and ahhing over Rich or getting an extra or getting Bont in the forward line, and I went with Bont. But
no harm done either way. I think Rich was okay because I obviously had Ablett get injured, and I had Bell Chambers in the rucks. So what I did is I ended up going Ablett to Rich and then Bell Chambers to Goldstein. So sort of a premium for a premium, mid-price for mid-price. But obviously Rich has gone on to score well and make money, and Goldstein's been, like the third best player in Supercoach. That was a no-brainer for me. And on topic of rucks, Goldstein, Mumford, I mean, can't really go wrong, I don't reckon, with Goldie and then someone else. And up forward, very similar to you, I've just put Goddard in as a little sneaky upgrade, but started with Swan, Martin and Gray as premium, so they've been brilliant. But I'll make a mention of Swan because it's sort of the same as last year with Beams. Remember, everyone obviously picked him, but he could quite easily have just gone poo. And a lot of people were getting a bit worried about Swan because that pre-season game he didn't do too well, but he's been fantastic. So
I think you got to look at it that he's a Brownlow medalist.
Yep.
It's not going to be too often that he has a very poor year. So
no, the best thing about that 150 he scored against St Kilda a couple of Friday nights ago, he was demanding the ball off people. You know what Swanee was like in his heyday? He was, he'd run past the player that took the mark and demand that he gets the ball. So he's back to doing that again, which we really like to see. So,
definitely. But
we did think for this video we'd run through, Gracie, just defenders, mids, rucks, forwards, and just have a look at who's been playing well, who's been not so well, and perhaps who we should look at for some upgrades over the next few weeks. But defence has been, let's be honest, it's been pretty crap. I mean, a lot of people have got, a combination of, like Nunes, Malcheski, not as common, but a lot of these guys that have really struggled this year, and I think you need to hold them. My personal opinion is that we need to hold them. I was going to save it for the next video, but we might as well say it now. But I'm saying no upgrades in your defence until the bye rounds. I think it's really hard at this point to tell who the top 6 and even the top 8 are going to be. Guys like Hooker and Rance, McDonald, who knows if they're all going to be there in another month's time. And then you're not going to pay $540K for Hooley. You've sort of missed the boat on him.
You're probably not going to pay $500,000 for Pittard either. So.
Absolutely not. Pittard, I don't mind so much because he has scored well against some good teams, but not right now. I think as long as you've got like a Heath-Shaw, like you're saying, Taylor and a few of these guys that are scoring okay, just hold on to your defenders. Let Oxley and all these guys completely max out, and then around the bye rounds, assess it all then. That's my honest opinion and what I think people should be doing.
Yep.
So. Because you look at some of the names there, like Bob Murphy, he might drop off. I wouldn't be trading Hurley in. McGovern might be the same. Hodgie's obviously going to miss a few weeks now, but he's one you'd probably want to get in, but not at 550 grand. So, what do you reckon, Gracie? It's been a bit of a trick to the start of the year. I think a lot of people, like even Lumumba's been a bit up and down, and it's been a bit crap.
Everyone took punts on. I know I took punts on Ibbotson, Higgins, and Nunes. Obviously, Nunes hasn't lit the house on fire. The main thing you got to look at is these three guys that I've got are going to be playing every week. They're not going to be the sub like one of your rookies could be, or one of these unproven guys could just go absolutely crap. Like obviously Hooker on the weekend scored 62.
Yep.
So
did the same thing last year too.
Yeah. Look, if you jumped on Tom McDonald, good on you. He's the All-Australian fullback at the moment for me, just from watching his last couple of games. Hooley's too expensive.
Yep.
Rance is too inconsistent. Hodges, obviously we know he's out. Hooker, like you just said, he's done it before.
Yep.
And just spiraled down. Pittard, he's up in the air at the moment. If he continues to average around that 95 to 100 until after the buys, I think he's possible to put him in. He could be a good D5, D6.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
McGovern, I wouldn't touch him at all. Taylor, I think if you haven't got him yet, I'd get him soon. He's just he's hit that form where he just floats back into the spot and takes those intercept marks. Yep. So Bob Murphy's an interesting one. The doggies are up. When the doggies are up, and he's the captain now, and listening to one of his press conferences, I think it was on the weekend, he said that he's loving playing with these kids because they've re-energised him. So keep an eye on Bob Murphy. He has proven it in the past.
He
can
has,
score,
and consistently too. Absolutely.
Doherty, he would have been okay to jump on at the start because he did start off quite well. He would have made you some money, but obviously you wouldn't get him now. No. Corey Enright's been pretty consistent too.
Yep.
And he's proven it before. So if you had him, there's no issues there really.
No.
But look, all your rookies have been great. You've got obviously Brodie Smith. He's had a couple of quiet games, but that's sort of only it hasn't affected him too much. He's still averaging 90 there. So, but yeah, like you said, just wait till probably after the buys.
Yep.
You've got 6 weeks, then you should know who the top defender is.
Exactly right. And look, in other years, it's been a little bit more obvious who the top guys are. But remember, we've lost McVeigh, we've lost Hanley, we've lost Bartel. We lost a lot of guys who you'd say are safe picks. And even to some extent, if you end up with 6 defenders who are all averaging between even 85 and 95, I don't think you can go wrong. I think they're all going to be very inconsistent. But I just reckon just hold your trades for now. You've even got like Michael Hibberd scored 40 on the weekend, and he'll be about 380k in a few weeks. So and Birchall's on that list. He's another one to keep an eye on. But just wait and see. I reckon most of us have sort of got, like you're saying, a few of these mid-price guys. But let's just hold off. Let's just play the rookies, unless you're doing a downgrade, because some people might have jumped on Jake Kelly, or we might get Scharenberg will be back soon. I think Dan McKenzie from St Kilda might be a defender, but unless you're doing a downgrade, just let it play out and see how we go. But defence has been a pretty ordinary.
We'll move on from that crap.
That poo. All right.
So on to the mids, Fitzy. Obviously, we've spoken about Fife, Pendles. We could probably do a good, bad, and ugly in this section.
Yes.
Good has been Fife, Mundy, Pendles. Hanbury has pulled out another good year.
Yep.
Shields been the superstar that they, like you said, he was scouted as the best 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Armitage has been a real surprise packet, I reckon, at the Saints. He's I don't know if everyone saw that they had a meeting last week before the Essendon game, and all the older guys sort of helped the younger guys deal with the pressure, and they almost knocked off Essendon. So Heppel's been quite well. Neil's been a massive surprise packet.
Yeah, big price rise.
Especially with Mundy and Fife doing so well, but that just shows how dominant Freo have been. So Brad Ebert, he's always consistent. He's not he's not a big scorer. He's going to be around that 105 to 110.
He'll drop off, I think. If you look at his stats last year, he started the same, but then he sort of dropped off during the year. I mean, look, he's only young. He's actually only like 24. I think he's been in the system forever. Same with Armitage. Armitage is only about 25 too. So there is room for these guys to break out, but don't go moving hell and earth just to get these guys in.
So Prestia has been consistent, same as last year. Lewis, obviously, he's one of the better players at Hawthorn. Suspended at the moment. So maybe look to bring him in after the buys. So
that's probably about your top 10 there. It's not how we thought it would be. Because if you sort of sort this column by price,
you look at it. Fife and Pendlebury were probably the only ones that you knew would be up there. So,
but you look at Ablett, we've had injured. He goes in our ugly category. Side bottom, he's been out with a broken thumb. Selwood's dropped off a bit, although he'll be right. Libba got injured in the preseason. Callan Ward's an interesting one because I considered bringing him in last year, but he seems to be almost being affected by the arrival of Griffin and then the emergence of you guys like Shield and even like Whitfield's been playing well. Keelio's had a few good games, so he might be one that might drop back to that 105, 110 average. Rockcliffe obviously can't catch a break, but he's going to be nice and juicy.
He's in a very ugly category.
He's very ugly
average category. Of 42, and he's going to drop. His break even this week is 293, I think it is.
Yep.
So he's going to drop a good 150,000, 100,000 from where he is. So
you're going to have to get on him.
Just before the buys will be the time that you get on him for probably Patrick Cripps. So
I reckon that's perfect, But wait until Rockcliffe's had one or two good games because every chance maybe he won't come back all that well. Maybe they'll play him up forward. And the other thing you keep in mind is everyone's going to have him. So if you don't have Rockcliffe, maybe you get Beams instead. You're going to have a bit of a point of difference there. So I'd probably wait till we get some evidence to make sure he's actually back to that level of scoring. The other guy who's not there, but he's dropped off a lot, is Stevie J. Obviously got the sub-vest last week. A few people are saying you could almost downgrade Daniel Rich or someone like that. Cripps to
Wouldn't be a bad idea because I think the deal with the sub was just to show Stevie J that he just needs to get back to basics and not do all the tricky stuff that we know he's good at, but just with his older age, he's not as quick as what he used to be. So just back to the basics, and we saw when he come on as the sub, he kicked 2 goals, had 9 disposals, and almost lifted Geelong up over Kangaroos. So, but it wouldn't be a bad choice for a downgrade. You're going to make money off it.
If he ended up being your M9 or your 9th midfielder on the bench, that would be really handy around finals. But definitely. I mean, look, if this happened to him maybe in round 13 or 14, when your team's a bit more close to being complete, you might consider it then. But it's probably a bit early to be bringing in a guy like that when you could easily go Rich to, Sloan or someone like that who's going to drop a bit more for 100k. So, but it has definitely been an interesting start to the year in terms of who the top guys are. But
definitely
he's out. We'll get a good idea of who the top 5 are going to be. But I really like Dylan Shield-Gracie, just when you were saying him before, because if you cast your mind back to 2011, 2010, he was the best 17-year-old in the country by an absolute mile. He's, your Jaeger O'Meara model and these sorts of guys.
Yep.
And a lot of people probably forget that just because he's in the GWS midfield and he's had a few good games. Is he going to keep going? I personally think that he will. Yep. I don't know if he'll keep averaging 120, whatever he is now, but between 110, 115, I reckon he'll average what Ward did last year. That's my call. I reckon he'll take over that number 1 role. He's not going to get a tag, so I think jump on, especially at 530k after he got 60 the other week.
The lowest he's going to be in quite a while with a break even of about 50, I think he's got this week. So
exactly right. So
we'll move on to the rucks now, Fitzy.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a one-horse race up until the last couple of weeks with Todd Goldstein. 3 horses.
Yeah, I'm including Bliss.
Oh, right, fair enough. Todd Goldstein's obviously burst out of the gate to be the clear number 1 ruck by an absolute mile, and if you don't have him, he's a guy that you just need to get in somehow. I think, to be perfectly honest, you could have Goldstein and John Segler as your second ruck, and you're not going to miss much. I think that's how we should approach it this year. It was a bit up in the air how the ruck scoring would change players, and I paid a lot of money for Shane Mumford. I half only got him because he was only about 5% of teams, and that's worked out okay. But I reckon if you've got Goldstein plus one of the next 10 guys, then you're fine. That's what I reckon I'll be doing. A lot of people are going, should we trade, Jacobs and Marich and Mumford, these sorts of guys, to Martin, which I personally wouldn't be doing. But it has been interesting. The guy you mentioned, Blitzarves, is in there as the number 3 ruck overall at the moment, which is very surprising.
He wouldn't have picked that, but he is playing in every position and he's getting a lot of touches.
Yeah.
So it probably wasn't, wouldn't have been a dumb move at the start of the year to get him in. And you've got a link. There's probably not much you could do with the link, but I mean, if you were to ever trade a rookie, you could always put Blitzarves into your midfield and upgrade to another ruckman if one was scoring quite well. So, as you said, I think Stephen Martin is too much of a risk. Blitzarves at this price now, you've probably missed the boat a little bit. Grundy is the same. You would have done well if you picked him at the start of the year.
Absolutely. And don't forget, he was the best ruckman in that draft a couple of years ago. And Collingwood got him at pick 10 or something crazy for a song. So, not surprising that he's broken out, but I still wouldn't be getting him in now.
And obviously, Marriage he's had his ups and downs. Ryder's no pre-season, which just showed at the start, but on the weekend you saw some signs in the showdown that he's not far off it. So And then, like Nananui's been relatively quiet. Sandilands, you can see there, has dropped almost 120,000.
Yep,
so
he'd be one I'd be trading, actually.
Yep.
He's not looking good, and he'll get a rest at some stage.
Definitely.
The thing that's odd, I mean, Zach Clark's been doing actually quite well, but with Fremantle playing so well, the number one ruckman's not doing much. So if they start playing poo, he's going to be scoring even worse. I think he even got 40 last week, so I'd be jumping off him if he took a punt.
Another interesting one is Zach Smith. He was doing quite well, but then he got dropped.
He did.
Which was interesting.
I personally think Nichols is by far the better ruckman in that team, but they seem to want to try one, then try the other one. Maybe Smith's probably a little bit better up forward, whereas Nichols is purely a tap ruckman, doesn't do a lot around the ground. So, and even my old mate Bell Chambers, sorry I had to ditch him after round 2, he looking poo. The sad thing is, for a guy like him, he's a good example of him and Sandlands and a lot of these guys that have been affected really badly is they have a really good game and just don't get the points for it. I reckon I was pretty angry after Anzac Day, or it might have even been the week before, when Bell Chambers had 12 touches, 100% efficiency, 27 hit-outs, he kicked a goal, had about 6 marks, and he scored 60 points. So you need to get on Goldie, and then just any of the next 10 guys, perfectly honest, is going to be fine. Just set and forget and leave it. So moving on to the forwards,
which has been obviously, I mean, the whole thing's been interesting, but your usual guys like Pavlich has been quite strong at the start of the year. He did get knocked out at the weekend. Rioli's been pretty consistent. Roughhead's had a couple of big games. Obviously Swanee we knew was going to be up there. Kennedy's kicked a couple of bags, which has probably helped his scoring.
We got 170.
An interesting one is Dalhouse, Fitzy. You said a couple of weeks ago that you were keeping your eye on him. He's put in another 2 good games since then.
He has.
What's your thoughts? Can you bring him in now, or do you wait still a little while?
I still want to wait. I think I'm really keen on Dalhouse, and Bontempelli's been the same for the doggies, but the doggies are up and about. But it's this time every year. It's like, oh well, we've seen 5 or 6 weeks of worth of games. Are they the real deal? Are they not? Dalhouse in particular had a really good start last year and then dropped off towards the end of the year. Now, he is playing more midfield time, which you've got to keep in mind because Libba's not playing, and they lost Griffin, of course. So he's the one I'm keeping my eye on. However, he's going to score the odd 90, the odd 80, so he's not going to go much. At the moment, he's 520k. I'm comfortable paying that for him, but I'm more comfortable paying that for him at the buy rounds when we've got 2 months worth of solid scoring and we can see how they're going. Because, let's be honest, the doggies are playing out of their skin. I hope they keep going because everyone loves an underdog. But he's one guy. I've got him. I've sort of got a little vision of who my final 6 will be, and he's in there at the moment. So, but I think if you're going to get him in, I'd possibly wait now. When he was under 500k, he was a good buy. But I think if he's sitting at this stage, I'd prefer. I've actually picked up Goddard at 507. I think he's bottomed out and he's on the way back up. So that's who I'd be looking at if you were getting in a forward this week. But I think Dalhouse should be in your final 6, but maybe just wait and see how he goes for another few weeks anyway.
Definitely. So, and obviously Harley Bennell's quite cheap at the moment, probably the cheapest he might be in for a while. Obviously he's playing a lot more midfield. They've got Ablett and Swallow and all those guys out at the moment. So we mentioned Pavlich. Buddy's been very quiet at the moment. He's probably almost at the lowest he may get. And then from there on, there's not a whole heap. You got Bontempelli, which still give him a few more games, and see how he goes. But if you did start with him, you'd be loving him at the moment. Obviously, Robbie Gray's the standout. If you can get him in your forwards, get him in there. I'd be picking him in your forwards rather than your mids, and wait and get that extra premium midfielder. Because there's not going to be a whole heap of premium forwards towards the end of the year. I think your sort of your top 6 will be like your Swan and Martin and Roughhead, Gray. You throw Goddard in there.
You could throw a blanket over the next batch. I mean, you've got Devon Smith, who's been pretty good. I'm not sure how he's going to go long term. There's a lot of these young guys that obviously at some stage they're going to break out, but I'd much prefer to bring in your Goddards and these guys at a lower price, because they're obviously bottoming out, and then maybe bring them in later on. So, but you are right. Bennell's one I'm sort of keen on. I think if you look at his scores from last year, he goes massive. But then his floor is, like 40 points. But I think this year that might sort of creep up a little bit. So, but he's going to be up and down all year. So don't get him in. Maybe this week if you're really keen. But wait till later on in the year when he strings a couple of, 70 or 80 scores together and pick him up then. But most people's forward lines should be pretty good. I mean, most people started with sort of Gray, Martin, Swan, Bontempelli, a mixture of these guys, even Goddard. Delidio's still floating around, but I think we're probably a bit past him. And even Bartel, when he comes back, probably won't be quite right. So I'd be avoiding those sorts of guys, but definitely keep an eye on Smith and Dalhouse are two just off the top of my head that I think would be pretty good in your final team. But again, you've got Robbie Tarrant there scoring awesome. Clark still has money to make. Hogan's got a bit more to make. Salem's probably about right to trade out, but you've got guys there that are scoring well. So I think hold strong and look to grab guys as they're going down before they come back up. So for me, I was just saying I'll probably trade Salem out for Goddard this week just to try and catch him on the upswing. But there's a lot of key forwards that have snuck in there at the moment. Gracie, like you say, Kennedy got 170, so probably tend to pick the midfielders over the key forwards. But just to finish up, I will admit that I had a look at Buddy in the pre-season. He's actually played pretty well. He just hasn't had a big game yet. So good news if you started with him because he hasn't got 50 or 60 like he did first few rounds last year. But I reckon this year I might even avoid him. I reckon he's playing well at the moment, but he's just not getting the big scores yet. So
it's probably due to the fact that Sydney are struggling a little bit at the moment. They're just obviously got beaten by the Bulldogs on the weekend and Fremantle the week before. So they've been, probably not to the level that they want to be at the moment, but give them a few more weeks. Though they're always going to be there or abouts come late into September. So
absolutely.
And obviously, you got Rewalt and Pavlich. You might see them as being on the downward for Supercoach, but Pavlich has proved that he's dominated the year. Like if he had got 100 on the weekend, he'd be averaging well over that ton. So at 458, he's not a bad price.
He's not. And I mean, like you're saying, Ross Lyon said that he's feeling really well. Like obviously he had no pre-season last year when we all started with him, but he's got a couple of big tons in the first couple of weeks. And out of the key forwards, Pav is the one guy who always scores well against good teams. Like if you look back through some of the years when he was averaging big numbers, he kicked 6 goals against Hawthorn. Remember last year when Hawks smashed them? He always does well against good teams. So you don't have to worry about their draw. If Freo's up and about, then he's your man. So
definitely. Well, Fitzy, we'll finish off. We had a fan question come in today.
Hello.
It was from Adam Oxley.
Adam Oxley. Oh, well, should we send it in like a bunch of flowers and being awesome?
It wasn't the comment of Adam Oxley. That
Wrong, Adam Oxley.
It was a name like anyway. But he's asked. He wants to upgrade Bell Chambers this week. He's leaning on Blissarves. He can't believe it. Do you think he could sustain a 100 average, possibly improve, or do I spend the extra 100k and go Steph Martin?
Does it say who his other ruckman is?
I would imagine that he's probably got Goldstein or Mumford or someone like that. So
if you don't have Goldstein, bring Goldstein in. Absolutely, he's by far the number one. Steph Martin, I'm not sure if he's still worth 569k. I wouldn't mind taking a little roll of dice on Blissarves. I mean, I don't mind him at 460. You
look at it this way. Martin's pure ruckman. He might go forward occasionally. Blissarves is going to play centre half back, ruck.
Yep.
He'll go to wing. Yep. Centre half forward.
Yep.
He's going to get possessions everywhere. He's going to take intercept marks. He'll go forward and kick a goal. He'll get hit out. So he's probably going to be more consistent as we've seen already. I think his lowest score's been like a 90 or something, or 80 something.
Consistent.
So, I would definitely agree and go Blissarves on that one. Steph Martin's it's just with Brisbane at the moment. They're dropping players who are not in form, and it's just it's not looking good.
Yeah, look, if he rucks by himself, yes, get him in. And maybe even if you can hold Bell Chambers for another couple of weeks and just see how that plays out, but I'm really worried that the Lions will swing the axe, bring Louis back in and put him at full forward. And we all know that if Leuenberger plays, they don't sort of play very well together.
Yep.
That's what I think might happen. I think they've obviously had Closey go down. Dan McStay can't hold down that forward line on his own. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Leuenberger come back in. And it just makes me a little bit nervous having them both in there.
Yep.
But look, I mean, the other option is you could spend a little bit more than Blissarves and get a Mumford or a Marich, who we've got one of each. They're both number one rucks. They're not going to get, there's no if, buts or maybes that they might get dropped or lose form. So
Paddy Ryder's probably another good one there.
Paddy Ryder's another good one. So I don't mind taking the punt on Blissarves, actually. I know we said before that maybe you've missed the boat on him, but if you're trading Bell Chambers, it's not really that much of a trade anyway. But I guess the last thing you want is to have to trade him and then trade him out later on. But He's only in how many percentage of teams? Well, he's in 10% of teams now, but if you wanted perhaps to go with a guy that's a pure number one ruck, Mumford or Marich might be a go. See, Mumford's still only in 7% of teams. Yep. That's why I got him at the start, because he's a bit of a point of difference.
It's interesting, isn't it? Nadanui's in 28% of teams.
I've never really looked through that.
It's amazing.
Wow.
But the other thing with Blissarves too, Fitzy, is McIntosh probably played one of his best games in the VFL on the weekend. So he had something like 20-odd disposals, had 30-odd hit-outs, kicked a goal.
Yep.
Being a Geelong supporter, I still don't think he's going to get in the team, unfortunately.
Yep.
As much as I'd love him in there, I think they'll still stick with Dawson Simpson. And especially if Clark and Stanley come back, Simpson will go out.
Yep.
And Stanley, Blissarves and Clark will rotate through the ruck, because all them three guys can go forward.
Good point.
Stanley and Blissarves can play back, so they're more swingmen.
Yep.
They're not genuine ruckmen, but they can still, if they can share the load. And Geelong usually does pretty well at reading the opposition hit-outs. So
I like that. Actually, that's a very good point you're making there, because obviously they've tried Simpson, they've tried Vardy, they've tried McIntosh, and it hasn't really worked. But it seems like the combination they've got going at the moment is actually working pretty well for them. I noticed that on the weekend, I reckon about half of Blitsarv's taps were to advantage.
Yep.
And not only that, he was coming up as the third man, as a 200-centimetre player. That's pretty scary. So I'm blocking Marich, and he'd come over the top. So, you've sort of convinced me. I reckon I'd take a punt on him. I reckon, look, worst comes to worst, he's going to get to 520k, and you can always trade him on later in the season if you need to. But
definitely,
the bottom line is, as long as you've got Goldstein, pick one of those 10 guys, even down to Nadanui, not Sandlands because he's a spud, but any of those guys are going to do you well. So maybe you can save a bit of money and get Blitsarve.
Yeah, and always look, when picking a ruckman, that they're number one ruck. If not, they're really cemented in the team. So it's like with Paddy Ryder and Lobie play well together, because Ryder can play as a genuine full forward as he did on the weekend. So I think we've covered that question quite well. If you've got any more questions, Facebook messages at Sergeant Supercoach, or Twitter at Sergeant Supercoach. You can Twitter myself at Matty.Grace.
Yeah.
That's MATTY.
I'm at John Fitzgerald. John with no H.
Yep.
Fitzgerald with
or
a D.
you can tweet at Vernie Valentos, who is the Sarge.
He's in almost the top 1,000.
He is the Sarge. He's almost cracked the top 1,000, and we will quote, he did say there is no catching him. So that could come back to bite him. We will keep this until later in the year.
We will.
And we'll replay the video if we beat him. So any questions, send them in, and we'll see you later in the week for our preview to round 6.
See you then.